So are there any other questions on AB review or on review 6? What about the part 2? So we went through the multiple choice, but we didn't really talk about the free response questions. Are there questions on that? Or does everybody feel like they got it? Katie.
Can we go over 12?
Sure. Got it. So that has both a graph and a table. So the fuel rate consumption in gallons per minute recording during an airplane flight is given by a twice differentiable and strictly increasing function R of time t, the graph of R and the table of selected values. For the time interval are shown above. The rate of fuel consumption is increasing fastest at time t equals 45 minutes. What is the value of R double prime of 45? So the way to look at it is, so this is number 12, part B. If R prime of 45 is a max, okay, then remember that R double prime of 45 is the derivative of R prime. Not necessarily, well, yeah, R prime of 45. Okay, so if R prime of 45 is a max, what's the derivative at a max equal to? Okay, 0. Okay, and that's really what you gotta say.
Okay, I think I was overthinking it too much, like the original graph.
I mean, we might be able to get there somehow, but and maybe you could say that it was a point of inflection, but I think that may make sense, and I think that was acceptable to the College Board. Anything else on 11 or 12 here? You're allowed to feel like you got this because we've been reviewing a lot. So like, I'm not really worried if you don't have questions. A little bit worried, but not. A little bit worried because I'm afraid some of you aren't doing it. But okay, so we're good on this one then? No other questions? Okay. Then I believe I put the answers for 7 in there. So why don't you check your answers for 7? Yeah, the answers to 7. Are we ready to ask questions on review set? Still need a minute, okay? All right, so what questions are there on review set? Annabelle.
Can we go over 3?
Sure. So number 3 is the same for both AB and BC. So it says the first derivative of a function f is given by that. So f prime of x is cosine squared x over x minus a fifth. How many critical values does f have on the open interval from 0 to 10? So if it's an open interval, that means you don't have to include the endpoints. And then really, if it's a critical value, that means that f prime is equal to 0, right? So since this is a calculator permitted question, I graphed it. And I graphed that and x equal or y equals 0 and look for the intersection points. And I got intersection points at 1.09, 2.32, and 3.68.
I think I just counted the.
Okay. It's confusing. I totally get that. Other multiple choice, Dagny. Number 1, which is again the same for both sets. Let f be the function given by f of x is equal to 3 e to the 2x, and let g be the function given by that. At what value of x do the graphs of g and x have parallel tangent lines? So parallel tangent lines mean they have the same slope, which means that f prime of x is equal to g prime of x. So the derivative of 3 e to the 2x is 6 e to the 2x, and the derivative of 6x cubed is 18x squared. I divided both sides by 6 and got e to the 2x is equal to 3x squared. And again, this is a calculator permitted question, so I graphed it and found the intersection, and it was at negative 0.391. Oh, go ahead, Fiona. Yes. So BC folks, hang on for, or AB folks, hang on for a minute. This is BC number 4, which is different, and that's okay. So it says give the exact value of the sum n equals 0 to infinity cosine n pi 4 to the n over n factorial. So remember what we said. If you're looking for an exact value, it could be a geometric series. It could be a telescoping series. It could actually be a Maclaurin series if you know like what x is going to be. Okay. So what is sometimes helpful is to write out the first few terms and see what they look like. So when n is equal to 0, I get 1. Okay. Yes. Okay, and then I get 4 over 1 factorial plus 4 squared over 2 factorial minus 4 cubed over 3 factorial plus 4 to the 4th over 4 factorial minus etc. Okay. So that's not really a geometric series. It's not a telescoping series. So maybe it's going to be a Maclaurin series for something. Okay, and I'm going to know what x is. So I'm going to acknowledge that if I made it negative 4, like that, then what this really is x to the n over n factorial, right? And what is that? It's e to the x. So this is really going to be e to the negative 4. Okay. Other questions on the multiple choice for review 7? Day. Number 8. Number 8 is the same. So number 8 says if dy dt is equal to ky and k is a non-zero constant, then y could be. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. All right. First off, if my derivative and my y has a y in it, okay, then that probably means my y is e to the something. Okay, because when I take the derivative of e to the something, I get e to the something back. Okay. So that gets rid of d and e. Okay. If that doesn't make sense to you, this is a pretty easy one to brute force, right? I put my y with my dy's, and I put my t's or other things with my dt. Honestly, you should be able to integrate this in your sleep, right? Natural log y is going to be kt plus c. Raise both sides to the e. Y equals e to the kt plus c. We know that's e to the kt times e to the c, or c e to the kt. Okay. So looking at those, the one that has a constant in front of e to the kt is e. Okay. This is definitely one of those problems where I would answer this right now. I know how to do this. Even if you don't want to think about eliminating some answers, you know how to solve that differential equation. Okay. Other multiple choice questions? 9. Is 9 the same? No. But actually number 9 is good for the AB folks, so you might want to write this down. Okay, because this is the question you could have. The integral from 0 to infinity, the infinity part is tough. Dx over 16 plus x squared dx. So this is the BC. But AB folks is a decent one for you to remember some things. Okay, so first of all, remember that I can't really take an integral of infinity. So I'm going to take the limit as b goes to infinity of the integral from 0 to b of dx over 16 plus x squared. Okay? Now, let us ask ourselves, we've come to an integral. What's the first thing I do when I come to an integral? Can I solve it by inspection? Okay, Fiona says no, she's wrong, but we'll come back. What's the next thing I do? Use substitution. Where do I look for use? Denominators, inside, trig functions, e to the something. Okay, so if I let u be equal to 16 plus x squared, is that going to help me? No, because that's going to, when I take the derivative, du is going to be 2x dx, and I don't have an x. What's the next thing I do? Partial fraction decomposition is not necessarily the next thing I do, but it is something I would consider. Can you factor 16 plus x squared? No, not into anything useful and not without using imaginary numbers. So can't use partial fraction decomp. What's the other one? Integration by parts, but I don't really have two things that are multiplied by each other. So I've gone through all the tools in my toolbox, and that means I need to go back to the beginning. and do inspection again, which means it must be something that I should be able to recognize, which means it's probably a what? Probably an inverse trig function, okay? And that's one of those, either you know them or you don't, okay? So this one happens to be inverse tan, okay? And so what I have is my limit as b goes to infinity, 1/4 tangent inverse x/4, and I'm going to evaluate that from 0 to b. So that gives me, I'm going to put my 1/4 out front. My limit is b goes to infinity of the inverse tangent of b/4 minus the inverse tangent of 0. So remember, what does inverse tangent mean? No, just, and we're going to use that in a minute here. But what is inverse of any trig function? It's the angle whose tangent is this. So what is the smallest angle whose tangent is 0? Because we want to use the reference angle, right? Because we're not given any interval here. 0. Okay, so this is going to be 0. Now I got to look at this part. B is going to go to infinity. What is the angle whose tangent goes to infinity? Think about the curve. No. Pi is 0. TF. Pi/2. Remember, because the cosine of pi/2 is 0, so that puts the 0 in the denominator. So this is going to give me 1/4 times pi/2, or pi/8. Okay. So if you've gone through all the tools in your toolbox and nothing's working, it's probably an inverse trig function. Okay. All right, other questions on the multiple choice? Anybody else? Tia. 10, and 10 is different for BC. So your 10 is the limit as x goes to infinity of 1 plus 7 to the x to the 1/x. All right, so actually everybody should pay attention to this one because this is L'Hopital's rule, sort of. Okay, so you've come to a limit. What's the first thing you do when you come to a limit? You substitute in. Okay, so if I substitute in, this gives me, and this is so that we're clear, a 1/x, not a 4x. Okay, so this is basically going to give me infinity to the 0. Is that an acceptable answer? No. Okay. So that means that I need to do something else. I need to manipulate it so that I can get it into something that is infinity over infinity or 0/0, so I can use L'Hopital's rule. Okay. So I'm going to let y be equal to 1 plus 7 to the x, all to the 1/x. And then I'm going to take the natural log of both sides. So I have the natural log of y is equal to 1/x times the natural log of 1 plus 7 to the x. Or the natural log of 1 plus 7 to the x, that whole thing, over x. And then I'm going to take my limit as x goes to infinity of the natural log of y. So that's going to be my limit as x goes to infinity of the natural log of 1 plus 7 to the x over x. So now when I sub in, I get infinity over infinity, which is fantastic because I can use L'Hopital's rule. What does L'Hopital's rule say? What do I do? Okay, take the derivative of the numerator and the denominator separate. And remember, I still have to write limit. So the derivative of the denominator is easy. That's just going to be x. And the derivative of the numerator is a little more complicated, but I can do it. So whenever I take the derivative of the natural log, it's 1 over whatever I'm taking the natural log of. So it's 1 over 1 plus 7 to the x times the derivative of 7 to the x, which is 7 to the x times the natural log of 7. So that formula might be one you want to look up this weekend. Okay, the derivative of a to the x. So I'm going to rewrite this a little bit. So I've got my limit as x goes to infinity. 1 plus 7 to the x times 7 to the x. I'm sorry. And well, anyway, there it is. I'm not saying it very well, but I've written it correctly. Okay. And now I want to acknowledge that when I'm heading out to infinity, there's not a really big difference between 7 to the x and 1 plus 7 to the x. So if I invoke end behavior modeling, that's still going to be my limit as x goes to infinity, 7 to the x, basically over 7 to the x, times the natural log of 7. My 7 to the x's cancel, and I end up with the natural log of 7. But remember that I'm not done. Number one, that's not an option. So they were nice to you. And number two, remember that that's the limit of the natural log of y. And I want the limit of y. So that last step is to take e to the natural log of 7 and have it be equal to 7. And that's my limit. So it does not seem that we have specifically come across a L'Hopital's rule question in our review. So that might be something that you want to look up over the weekend. I have unlocked all of the stuff on AP Central, so I'm sure you could find the section that has that in it. And I would do a couple of those problems just to remind yourself. Okay. Anything else on the multiple choice? The part twos, the FRQs, free responses. Questions on those? They are the same for the A, B, and the B's. Which? 11. Part B. Okay, so we have this function. F of x is equal to the square root of x plus 1. For 0 is less than x is less than or equal to 3. And 5 minus x for x between 3 and 5. Part B is find the average of f of x on the closed interval. So remember that the average value of f is 1 over b minus a times the integral from a to b, f of x dx. So that's going to be 1 over 5 minus 0. But I need to integrate this separately. So I need to take my integral from 0 to 3 of x plus 1 to the 1/2 dx plus my integral from 3 to 5 of 5 minus x dx. And then it's just a matter of doing the math. Because remember, what you're really doing is finding the area under the curve and dividing it by the interval, the length, the width of the interval. So you're still doing that even though it's a piecewise function. Do you need me to integrate it?
I just wonder when is to use the net average, like when is to use this formula and when to use like FA minus FA over B minus A.
That's the average. They really ask two different things. This is the formula to find the average value. F of A minus F of B over B minus A is the average rate of change. So it's like, this is finding the average position. The other formula is finding the average speed. Other questions on this? On 11 or 12? Annabelle? Sure. So now G is defined by this other thing. If G is differentiable at x equals 3, what are the values of K and M? Okay. So remember that differentiability implies continuity. Not the other way around. But if my function is differentiable at x equals 3, it's continuous at x equals 3. So the continuity part tells me that k times the square root of 3 plus 1 has to be equal to m times 3 plus 2. So basically, that gives me what? 2k is equal to 3m plus 2. Which is lovely, except that I still have two unknowns. So the fact that it's differentiable means that as x approaches 3, that as x approaches 3 from the negative side, that derivative has to be the same as when I approach 3, the derivative from the positive side. So when I approach from the positive side of 3, that means I'm taking the derivative of mx plus 2. So my derivative is, again, the limit as x goes to 3 from the positive side of m, which is just equal to m. When I approach from the negative side, I have to take the derivative of k times the square root of x plus 1. So that's still going to be the limit as x goes to 3 from the negative side. That's going to give me k over 2 times x plus 1 to the negative 1/2. And again, the first thing I do when I come to a limit is substitute in. So I'm going to substitute in x equals 3. So I've got k over 2, 1 over basically the square root of 3 plus 1. So this gives me k over 4 equals m. And now I have two equations and two unknowns. So I just pop one into the other and do the algebra. Okay. Anything else on this? Fiona, do you have a question or are you just looking at me?
Can we go over
The next one, number 12. Okay. B and C. Okay. So, oh, I've drawn all over this. Let f be the function given by that, and let L be that line where L is tangent to the graph of f. Let R be the region bounded by f and the x-axis. Let S be the region bounded by the graph of f, the line L, and the x-axis, as we see up there. So, part B is, does anybody need to see part A? So part B says find the area of x. Well, the way I decided to do this is this is 6 or 7? 6, right? Or 7? 7, okay. So what I decided to do was if I drop a line down like that, well, then I have a triangle here, right? So the area of S is going to be the area of the triangle minus this. Okay, and that's easy. Might not look it, but it is because it's the area, it's actually the area under that curve, y equals f of x, between 2 points, which makes my life a lot easier. Okay, so the area is the area of the triangle minus the integral from 3 to 4 of 4x squared minus x cubed dx. And I figured out, or maybe I was told, that this point is 3, 9. This is x equals 4, and that's 3, 0. And whoops. And this is x equals 6. And that's x equals 6. That was me. I accidentally somehow unmuted myself on this computer. I stopped talking as soon as I started. Okay, so you can just figure those points out by looking at where things intersect. Okay, Yvette, you can still hear me, right? Okay. So the area of my triangle, that's just going to be 1/2 base times height. So that's 1/2 3 times 9, because my triangle goes from x equals 3 to x equals 6. And the y value at the top is 9. And then my integral goes from 3 to 4 because those are the limits for where my f of x is. So you just do that out. And I believe I used my calculator because it's a calculator part. So I got 5.583. And that gave me my 7.97. Okay. Make sense? You had to be a little creative, but you could do it. All right, so part C was to find the volume generated when R is revolved around the x-axis. So I used disks. So this was taken and kind of revolved like, well, not quite like that. Revolved like that. And then I just took a disc that looked like that. And the radius of my disc here was actually y from y equals f of x. And my thickness is dx. And because I revolved it, all my discs are cylinders. They have a circular cross section. So that's going to be my integral, I said from 0 to 4, pi r squared dx. I can pull out the pi. The r, the radius, is y. And y is equal to 4x squared minus x cubed. And the thickness of my disk is dx. And I know my limits of integration are 0 to 4 because my solid goes from x equals 0 to x equals 4. That's where it crosses the x-axis. And again, I ended up with 156 pi, and that's where I got the 409.2. Okay? All right, couple things. Number one, are we having class at 8 o'clock or 8:15 on Monday morning? I will be here, and we can go over the other examples, the other sample tests I've given. I don't care, and I don't care whether or not you show up, except that somebody needs to say they're coming, and then they really need to show up. Okay, I mean, I'll be here, but I have other things to do. So I'm not going to sit here unless one person is going to commit to showing up. Anybody wish to commit to show up? You going to come, Fiona? Then come, and we will work on whatever you want to work on. It might be a few minutes late because I have to take my son to school, but fine, we will do that. And if anybody else wants to come, you can join us, okay? I just need a commitment from one person. And if Fiona's it, then cool, okay? So that's good. The way to study for a math test is to do math, okay? So I have given you review 8 and 9, which is again mixed review, so it's 10 multiple choice and 2 part 2s. I will post the answers over the weekends, okay, so that you can check your work. You know, you've got 3 days if you don't count today, so you know you do 6 or 7 multiple choice questions and 1.5 part 2s every day. Keep it up. If you have been doing the review in class, then you're pretty well prepared for this, okay? You might want to look over the derivatives if you're having problems remembering them, and you might want to look at the inverse trig derivatives. Again, it's probably going to be 1 multiple choice question on the whole test. Decide whether or not that is worth your time. As you go through the multiple choice questions, have your symbols in your head. I can do this right now and I'm going to do it. I can do this if I have time, and there's no clue. I have no idea what I'm doing, okay? And spend your time on the ones that you know how to do. Answer the ones that you don't know how to do. I believe the advice is you pick your letter of the day, okay? Talk to Katie about the number that you need to be correct to get the number you want on the AP exam. I know she's got a calculator, okay? Nobody's gonna love you any less for how you do on this exam, except that I know how well you should do on this exam because I've worked with you all year. I will only be disappointed if I think you gave up. Okay, it's 3 more days and then you never have to do this again. And if you do have to do it again, it's because you want to, because you're going to be an engineer or a physicist or something. Okay, you owe it to yourself, like my pep talk the other day. You owe it to yourself to spend these last couple days. I'm not saying you should do math 12 hours a day for the next 3 days. I'm not, but you should do something. And you should look at your derivatives and make sure you remember what they are. You should look at what that formula is for the derivative of a to the x, because you'll forget it. Everybody does. I know I do. Okay. Just keep practicing. You're pretty good. You're pretty ready. I would recommend you do a L'Hopital's rule or 2 problem. Okay. And again, I've opened up everything on AP Central and College AP Classroom or whatever, so you should be able to find some examples there. You can do this. BC folks, you need to bring me your books on Tuesday.
Tentative meet in the front hall.
Or sooner.
But is on the white bus and the red bus.
If you wish to keep it to study, then keep it to study. You can do this. I believe in you. Bye, Yvette. Have a good weekend. Poor Yvette. She never actually hears the bell ring.